Your soulmate just received devastating news about you. And they're still shaking. My beloved child. Something has happened that your soulmate was never emotionally prepared to hear, and the moment the news reached them, everything around them seemed to disappear. They read the words once. Then again. Their hands went still, their thoughts scattered, and for several long seconds they could not decide whether what they had just learned about you could possibly be true. Don't skip, because the devastating news was not simply about something that happened, it was about what you may have been carrying silently while everyone assumed you were perfectly fine. Your soulmate suddenly realized that behind your calm face, your distance, your unanswered words, and those moments when you seemed different, there may have been a story they never understood. And that realization shook them more deeply than the news itself. They began remembering conversations with you, especially the little moments they had once dismissed as ordinary. A pause before you answered. A sentence you never finished. A day when your energy seemed different. A moment when you needed understanding but chose silence instead. Now those memories feel completely different to them. Stay till the end, because what they discovered next changed the meaning of everything they thought they knew about you. At first, your soulmate wanted to reject what they had heard. They wanted someone to tell them there had been a misunderstanding. But one detail kept returning to their mind, because it connected perfectly with something you had said long ago. Suddenly, your soulmate understood why you had protected certain feelings, why you sometimes stepped away instead of explaining yourself, and why there were moments when you seemed to be waiting for them to understand without forcing you to say everything. Their hearts sank because they began asking themselves one painful question: how did I not see this? And that question has not left them. Something huge is waiting for you, because this revelation did not make your soulmate turn away. It did exactly the opposite. For perhaps the first time, they stopped thinking about what they wanted from you and started thinking about what you might have needed from them. What happened afterward is where everything became even more intense. Your soulmate walked away from the conversation carrying the news inside them, but they could not return to their normal routine. Every ordinary thing suddenly reminded them of you. They picked up their phone, opened your conversation, stared at your name, and almost reached out, but stopped. Not because they did not care. Because they cared so much that they were terrified of saying the wrong thing at the wrong moment. Don't skip. There is something they now understand about you that could permanently change the direction of this connection. They finally recognize that some of the moments they interpreted as rejection may never have been rejection at all. Some of your silence may have been self-protection. Some of your distance may have been you trying to process emotions privately. Some of the walls they thought were keeping them outside may have existed because you were waiting to see whether they would remain when things became complicated. And now your soulmate is replaying everything. They remember the times they could have asked one more question but didn't. They remember moments when pride became louder than compassion. They remember assuming they had more time. That last thought is the one shaking them most. They assumed there would always be another opportunity. Another conversation. Another chance to explain. Another day to finally say what they had been hiding. But this news made them realize that nothing meaningful should be treated as guaranteed. Stay till the end, because they are now considering something they once promised themselves they would never do: reveal everything. No more half-truths. No more carefully controlled emotions. No more pretending you mean less than you actually do. They are beginning to understand that losing the opportunity to tell you the truth would hurt far more than the fear of being vulnerable. And then another detail reached them, something nobody expected. Someone who knows more about the situation quietly told your soulmate that you may have been protecting them from the full truth. That single sentence changed their entire expression. Because if you were carrying something difficult and still thinking about their feelings, then everything they believed about your distance was wrong. Now listen carefully, because this is where the devastating news begins turning into a revelation your soulmate never saw coming. They are still shaken, but underneath that shock something powerful has awakened: clarity. They finally see your value without the distractions, misunderstandings, outside opinions, and assumptions that once clouded their judgment. They are seeing the person who kept moving forward even when nobody fully understood what was happening inside. They are remembering your patience, your quiet strength, the way you gave more understanding than you received. And suddenly they are afraid, not of you, but of realizing everything too late. Something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate has reached a decision that could completely change what happens next. They do not want another person explaining you to them. They do not want rumors, assumptions, or second-hand information deciding what they believe. They want the truth directly from you. More importantly, they want you to finally hear their truth too. There is something they have been hiding behind pride and hesitation, something they almost said more than once but swallowed at the final second. Tonight, those unsaid words feel heavier than ever. Your soulmate keeps imagining one conversation, standing in front of you with nothing rehearsed, nothing hidden, and finally admitting exactly what changed inside them when they received this news. But there is one final detail they still do not understand, and it is the reason they have not reached out yet. The person who delivered the news did not tell them everything. Right before the conversation ended, that person paused and said there was another piece of information about you, something your soulmate needed to hear directly because it would explain why everything had unfolded this way. Your soulmate immediately asked what it was. The answer never came. Instead, they were told, when you learn the rest, you will understand why they stayed silent. Since that moment, your soulmate has been unable to think about anything else. Don't skip what comes next, because the missing detail is connected to a choice you made when nobody was watching, and once your soulmate discovers why you made that choice, the shock they are feeling right now may become something completely different. They thought the devastating news was the biggest revelation. They were wrong. The real truth is still coming. The silence after that unfinished warning became unbearable, because your soulmate could feel there was one missing truth capable of changing the entire story. They kept replaying those final words: when you learn the rest, you will understand why they stayed silent. At first, they believed your silence meant you had stopped caring. They wondered whether your distance meant your feelings had changed, whether you had quietly decided to move forward without them, whether everything they felt between you had existed only in their imagination. But now the devastating news about you has shattered that belief. My beloved child, don't skip, because what they learned next made them realize that your silence may have contained more love, restraint, and emotional strength than all the words they had been waiting to hear. A small detail finally surfaced. Your soulmate discovered that during a moment when you could have exposed everything, defended yourself, or explained exactly why you had changed. You chose not to. You protected something deeply personal instead. You allowed yourself to be misunderstood because you did not want an emotional situation to become heavier for everyone involved. And when your soulmate heard this, they froze. Suddenly, memories began returning with painful clarity. They remembered one particular conversation when you almost told them something important. Your voice changed. Your words slowed down. You came close to opening the door completely, and then you simply said you were fine. They believed you. Now they wish they had looked beyond those 2 words. Stay till the end, because this is where their regret becomes something much bigger than regret. Your soulmate now realizes that while they were waiting for proof that you cared, you may have already been showing it in ways they were too distracted to recognize. You gave space when you could have demanded answers. You stayed quiet when you could have created confusion. You carried emotions privately instead of placing everything on someone else. And now they are asking themselves how many signs they missed. How many times did you almost reveal the truth? How many moments did they walk away too quickly? How many nights did they assume you had forgotten them while you were actually trying to understand everything yourself? Something huge is waiting for you, because one question has begun haunting your soulmate more than all the others. If you were protecting everyone else, who was protecting your heart? That question changed their entire perspective. Your soulmate stopped thinking about what they believed you should have done and started wondering what they should have noticed. They opened old memories again, but this time without pride. Without assumptions. Without trying to prove themselves right. And what they saw left them shaken all over again. They remembered how you continued showing kindness even when things felt uncertain. They remembered the little ways you remained present without demanding recognition. They remembered one moment when they could sense you wanted to say something, but instead of asking you to continue, they changed the subject. That memory now feels enormous. Don't skip, because another revelation followed almost immediately. Your soulmate learned that the devastating news had not suddenly created your difficult emotions, it had only exposed something that had been building quietly for longer than anyone realized. This meant the person they thought was simply becoming distant had actually been navigating an internal crossroads. And suddenly your soulmate understood something they had never considered. Perhaps you were not waiting for them to rescue you. Perhaps you were simply waiting to see whether they could understand you without making everything about themselves. That realization hit hard. They began imagining what they would say if you were standing in front of them right now. At first, they imagined explaining themselves. Then defending their choices. Then telling you why they had hesitated. But one by one, those speeches disappeared. What remained was much simpler: should have listened more carefully. That is the sentence sitting inside them now. Stay till the end, because their next decision was completely unexpected. Instead of reacting immediately, your soulmate decided they needed the complete truth before approaching you. No assumptions this time. No outside voices deciding what your actions meant. They wanted to understand what actually happened. So they went back to the person who had delivered the original news and asked the question directly, "What aren't you telling me?" There was a long pause. Then came an answer your soulmate never expected: this isn't only about what happened to them. It's about what they decided afterward. Your soulmate's heart dropped. They asked what decision you had made. Again, hesitation. But this time they refused to leave without an answer. And when the first piece of that answer finally came, they realized the situation was about to become much more personal. Because your decision involved them. That was the revelation. Whatever you had been processing, whatever difficult truth had reached you, somewhere inside that moment you had apparently made a choice concerning your soulmate, and they had known absolutely nothing about it. My beloved child, something huge is waiting for you, because your soulmate's first reaction was not excitement. It was fear that they had misunderstood you for so long that your decision might now be irreversible. Their mind raced through every possibility. Had you decided to close the door? Had you chosen to stop waiting? Had you finally accepted that they would never understand what you were unable to say? They wanted the answer immediately, but the person standing before them said something that stopped every question. Before I tell you what they decided, you need to know why they made that decision. And that why changed the atmosphere completely. Your soulmate learned that at a moment when you had every reason to think only about yourself, you had still considered how your next move could affect them. That information left them speechless. It meant they had mattered to you even during a moment when they assumed they were completely outside your thoughts. Don't skip, because your soulmate is no longer asking whether you cared. They are asking why they ever doubted it. They are finally seeing the difference between someone who makes loud promises and someone whose quiet choices reveal what words cannot. And now the shaking they felt when the devastating news first arrived has transformed into determination. They want to speak with you. They want to hear your version without interruption. They want to tell you what they should have said long ago. But just when they believed they were finally about to learn your decision, another unexpected truth emerged. Your decision was not made yesterday. It was not made after the devastating news reached them. You had apparently made it earlier, before your soulmate understood anything that was happening. That means there was a specific moment when everything changed for you, and your soulmate was there without realizing its importance. They are now searching their memory for that moment. A conversation. A look. A goodbye that lasted slightly longer than usual. Something happened between you that seemed ordinary then but may have quietly determined everything that followed. Stay till the end, because when your soulmate finally identifies that moment, they will discover what you chose. And why the person who delivered the news was almost afraid to reveal it. The devastating news shook them, but your hidden decision is about to change them. There was one memory your soulmate could not escape, and the more they returned to it, the more they realized it may have been the exact moment everything changed. My beloved child, it was a conversation they once considered ordinary, nothing dramatic, nothing that seemed important enough to remember forever. But now every detail feels different. They remember the way you looked at them before answering. They remember how you paused as though there were 10 more sentences behind the one you finally spoke. They remember you asking a simple question about trust, timing, and whether people can recognize something valuable before circumstances force them to see it differently. Back then, your soulmate answered casually. Today, that answer is echoing through their mind. Don't skip, because they finally understood that you may not have been asking a random question at all. You may have been giving them an opportunity to see what was happening inside you without revealing everything directly. And they missed it. That realization made them return to the person who knew the truth and demand clarity. Was that when the decision was made? They asked. The response was quiet but immediate, yes. Your soulmate felt their entire understanding shift. Suddenly, they knew exactly which moment mattered, but they still did not know what you had decided. Stay till the end, because the answer was nothing like the possibilities they had imagined. You had not decided to punish them. You had not decided to make them jealous. You had not chosen to disappear simply to see whether they would chase you. Your decision was far more emotional. You had decided to stop forcing a connection that you believed should eventually become clear through honesty and mutual effort. You were willing to care without abandoning your own peace. You were willing to leave the door open without standing at that door forever. And when your soulmate heard this, they became completely silent. Because suddenly they understood what your distance truly meant. It was not the absence of feeling. It was the presence of self-respect. Something huge is waiting for you, because this was the moment your soulmate realized the devastating news had exposed an even deeper truth. While they were waiting for certainty from you, you had been waiting for courage from them. That realization followed them everywhere. Your soulmate began seeing the connection through completely different eyes. Every time you stepped back instead of arguing, every time you allowed silence instead of demanding reassurance, every time you chose dignity over emotional pressure, it all started making sense. And now there was another truth they could no longer avoid. They had feelings they had repeatedly minimized because admitting their depth would have required them to make a real choice. My beloved child, don't skip, because the shocking revelation was not simply that your soulmate cared. They already knew they cared. What frightened them was realizing how much of their future they had quietly imagined with you while pretending they were uncertain. They had pictured conversations that never happened. They had imagined seeing you after a long separation and wondering whether the connection would still feel the same. They had thought about what they would say if you finally asked them directly what you meant to them. Yet whenever reality gave them an opportunity to speak, fear whispered, "Wait." So they waited. And waited. Until the devastating news arrived and suddenly waiting no longer felt safe. Stay till the end, because they have now reached the point where silence feels more frightening than honesty. They returned to their phone again. Your name was still there. Their fingers hovered over the screen. This time they began writing. One sentence. Deleted. Another sentence. Deleted again. They realized there was no perfect message capable of carrying everything they wanted to say. How could they explain that one piece of news had forced them to reconsider months of assumptions? How could they tell you that they finally understood the meaning behind your silence without making it sound like another excuse? And most importantly, how could they ask for a conversation when they did not know whether your hidden decision had already moved you beyond them? Then they heard one more thing that changed everything. The person who had been revealing these truths said, "There's something you still don't know about that decision." Your soulmate immediately looked up. What? The answer came slowly. They left room for one possibility. Your soulmate stopped breathing for a second. One possibility. One unfinished doorway. One condition under which everything could still change. Something huge is waiting for you, because that condition was not about money, appearance, status, or some impossible promise. It was about something much harder to fake: consistency. And now your soulmate understands why this moment matters. You were never asking for perfection. You were never waiting for a dramatic performance. You wanted to know whether they're a